Howdy, indie developers and creative makers. Thank you for supporting this channel. I'm RangleMe, Grand Poobah of Game Design, and this is a getting started video for SMAFFdev, a methodology that could change your life. I've been creating tabletop RPGs, video games, and toys for over 40 years. I love to draw comics, program computers, and tinker with technology. Everything I do is creative. I've been using SMAFFdev techniques on dozens of projects for over 20 years, and I have run many projects remotely for over 10 years. Like the underpants gnomes from South Park, many people know what they want to do, collect underpants, and they know they want to make a profit. What they don't know is the step that's missing in between. SMAFFdev is the magical ingredient that's missing from your phase 2. If you go to college and get an MBA, your instructors will tell you that business startups are about solving problems. This is fine for a business, but a creative studio isn't made to solve problems. A creative studio is made to create entertainment, to create something of emotional value. If you take a class or read a book about business solutions, most artists, game designers, comic book illustrators, writers, they simply won't listen to what's being said and say, oh, this sounds like it's liberating or creative, because it isn't. For all these reasons, SMAFFdev is a process that allows you to reintroduce the creative process back into your business solution of running a studio, especially working remotely. It avoids the grind associated with most business solutions. It's not surprising that the route to success for creative studios is about novelty, emotion, and finding fun. SMAFFdev has 4 core creative principles: convey ideas, feature-driven design, rapid iteration, and less is more. The feature-driven aspect of SMAFFdev focuses on a series of principles itself. The golden circle, defining your core feature, what some people call the unique selling proposition or hook. I like to call it the secret sauce. Define your pillar features, those features that end up defining the minimum set of things to be competitive in your market and yet unique and original. Then you need to sort and prioritize all those features with your core feature on top, and then use concept art and storyboarding to define all those features. One of the common ways of conveying your ideas is pitching. Pitching involves a certain number of steps involved. A hook, where you grab your audience; a call to action, where you encourage participation and interaction. The perfect call to action was from the Star Wars movie where R2-D2 plays back the hologram, and Princess Leia says, "Help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope." From that moment on, Luke Skywalker couldn't do anything but help. Appeal to emotions. This is generally a descriptive element at the beginning that starts to make people feel interested and engaged. And then last is the bullet point justifications. These are typically just features and pieces that are there to make the logical part of your brain agree with the emotional part of your brain, so that you will actually make a decision in favor of this idea. Simon Sinek is a motivational speaker and inspirational speaker that consults with companies all over the world about their business problems. And he has a philosophy called the golden circle. Everybody knows what they do, and most people know how they do it, but very few people know why. And the reason why is a motivation. It's the carrot or the stick. It's what is it that's compelling you? Why are you doing what you're doing? And you need to ask yourself that question, but you also need to ask it from the standpoint of, why does a customer care about what I'm doing? This is the big SMAFFdev slide. This shows the 4 phases of SMAFF development, starting off with the plan, going into the iterative cycle of the prototype phase, doing design, implementation, integration, and testing. You're doing that until you find the fun. And you move from prototyping phase into production phase when you've actually established that what you're doing is what you want. And in the case of games, whether it's fun; in the case of art, whether it's compelling and has the emotional content that you're looking for. The production phase is about finishing and building out all the content of whatever the product is that you're working on. And there's an element that I like to add to this, and in games we call this juice. Juice is a level of polish. It's the difference between when an amateur does something and a professional does something. It engages the person who is using the product or buys the product because of this additional element that isn't normally there in an amateur production. And finally, there's a release phase, and whether that's bug testing and fixing problems and preparing things for market, or whether it's getting things printed and assembling, whatever the parts are that compose your release, you have to plan for that as well. And every day I like to say that you've got a daily scrum, which is a rugby term for when all the players come together in a huddle. And typically in American football, it's where the quarterback is conveying what the plan is and what's going to happen during that play. But the point being that during that scrum, the team is conveying all of their information about and progress on the project. And I recommend doing daily builds if you're building something that's a piece of software. But if you're checking yourself like an artist, where you're saying, how many pages a day did I get done in my comic book, or a writer, how many pages did I write? You want to just measure your progress every day and evaluate yourself in between iterations. So evaluate your plan, evaluate your prototype phase, evaluate your production phase, and evaluate your release. One of the worst problems I've seen in creative development is that people don't know when they're finished, and they put in so much stuff that it becomes the kitchen sink problem, where they've got everything and more than they need in the final product. Michelangelo had a principle that he used in making art, and the Pope once asked him, how do you know what to cut away? He's working on David, and he started with a huge slab of granite. And Michelangelo's answered, it's simple. I just remove everything that doesn't look like David. Remember, when you're doing your own products, that less is more. There are a lot of software developers out there trying to solve the problems associated with projects. And this is a pretty good indication that project management is not easy, and that it can be very complicated, and that the software is made to try to help with that. Frankly, I've run into so many different forms of helpful software that you start getting the new hotness, where everything is, you try everything once and see if it works. I definitely don't believe in that anymore. The idea of the Michelangelo principle says to take stuff away and make it simple. So For SMAFFdev, I recommend two apps or tools. One is Trello. I use that for tasks and keeping reference information. And the second is Discord for all communications. I try to avoid even email as a form of communication because of the fact that things get lost or things get changed, or somebody that needed to read it didn't read it, and yes, it's there in their inbox, but so is a million other pieces of spam and junk. So Discord for all communications associated with the project. In Japan, they use a master scheduling technique that allows them to keep just the right number of parts and just the right number of steps in each piece of a production line as they move through the different information from each element of the production line conveys to the next one what needs to happen. With Kanban, which is what this process is called, we typically take a whiteboard and we divide it up into columns, and we call the columns to do, doing, and done. And then we put post-it notes with the names of all the tasks on it. And these post-it notes can actually be individual tasks associated with one person. They can be a direction for multiple people. They can include sub-steps in them. They can also include reference information. So just know that you don't just have to have 3 columns, you can have more, and that there's a lot of different kinds of information that can be conveyed on a post-it note. Trello is a piece of software that is a web app or a downloadable application for your phone or desktop that allows you to organize these whiteboards into virtual space. And each of your columns is individual lists, and each of the columns has a card attached to it, which is representative of the original post-it note. And in that card, you can have a number of things. You can color code them. You can tag them with a due date. You can tag them with which resource on your team is going to work on it. You can make checklists of all the subtasks associated with it. These cards are quite powerful. I typically make 5 columns or lists, one called the plan, where I put on all that master features list information that we generated with the prioritized list. I put in diagrams and storyboards and documents that support the design of whatever the product is that I'm working on. I convey as much information as possible about timelines and who's doing what, who's responsible for different parts, and all of that goes into that plan. That represents that first phase of the SMAFF 4-phase system. Then there's the to-do list, and new tasks are created based on which phase of the sprints, which is an agile term for an individual push. I typically do those pushes at about a week to 2 weeks, depending on the complexity of the kind of creative project that I'm working on. And so the task list for to do would have about a week to 2 weeks worth of work for everybody who's on the project. And as they finish making those, they start work on it, they move it to the doing list. Now that shows that there's progress on that task, and if I look, I can see that tasks are moving slowly from the to-do list to the doing list, and so as project manager, I know that we're seeing movement. Hopefully, as they get finished with each of the tasks, they're moving from doing to done. And if I find that things are fine and nothing is happening bad, I can remove that task, or I typically make another column that I call archive, where I keep old tasks so I can review them again later. But if I find that a task has become a problem, I can write it into the bug list. And so that list, basically I take the card that was called done, but it's not done. and so it gets added back to the bug list. I write some notes on it, and then I might actually move that from the bug list back into the to-do list again. There's a process here about task management that I like to tell the story that somebody says, "Oh yeah, did you make the new button for the menu?" And the person who's responsible for making the button says, "Yeah, that's done. I finished it." I said, "Well, I can't find it in the project." "Oh, I didn't check it in. It's not done. So, well, let me know when it's done. So the artist who's working on the button finishes doing that and checks it into the project. And now the programmer who needs to implement the button looks at it and goes, "Wait a second, this is the wrong size and it's not using the right font." Oh, right, that's a placeholder. It's not done. So the programmer says to the artist, "Well, then you tell me when it's done. And so now you've got a 3-step process. And so at least in the studios that I've managed and run, we always say, "Is it done," as an indication that the work is actually ready to be used in the game. Your own studios will develop your own jargon along the way. So I've used a number of different pieces of software in the past to help with collaboration and communication. Software like Slack, River, even Outlook and Gmail, number of different things that over the years served as our communications platform. What I found is that you want something that is free, that's going to allow for a lot of storage, because you're going to load files and pictures and things up there while you're communicating. You're going to want to have a voice chat area, because eventually some idea is going to get too complex for text chat, and you're going to want to actually have a brief voice meeting about it. I find that if you're doing a daily scrum, you probably want to do voice. I find that if you're doing end of the day check-ins, that even if they are using email to convey that check-in back to the project manager, that it's still a good idea for somebody to post, "This is what I did," in the general channel, so that the other people can see what's there, not just the manager. So Discord is the tool that I recommend, and there are mobile apps and desktop apps and web apps for Discord, and I certainly suggest using the one that works best for you. You're going to create a server, which is simply a unique channel just for you and your group, that you can then send out invites to the particular members that you want added to that server. You're going to create several new text channels. I make one called #assets and #code when I'm working on software. Whatever those channels are, you start with the general channel, which everybody can post into. You're going to create roles. The minimum role that you would want is an admin, somebody who can add new users, and if they need to purge an offending post or something like that. And there's a lot of documentation in Discord about setting up specific roles, but I do recommend that you at least have the person who created the channel has all the rights, but you may want to delegate some of those rights in an admin role to somebody else who's going to manage that daily information on Discord. Then you're going to want to send out invitations to the team and assign roles. So for most people, they're just going to have the generic, they're a team member role. That means no special role. For some, you may have them have the admin role. The person who created the channel has all the rights to invite people, delete things, move things, rename things, do whatever. I use the voice channel for meetings. I've had complex projects that I've needed more than one voice channel because we had larger team sizes or different things. Hey, going over to the voice channel, and we're going to have a quick briefing on a topic, and anybody who wants to can join. And now you've got the people who need to be in on the general voice channel, and they're chatting about the topic that you just brought up. People can stay and hang out, or they can leave, and that's not a case of difficult enforcement or anything else, right? You know who's in the room and you know who's not in the room. So again, Discord is my favorite tool for collaboration and communication. While it's a gamer-friendly chat system, I find it miles ahead of Slack and River in terms of the collaborative features that I need to have in project management. Thanks for watching. Join the Discord server. See the link below. Please like, subscribe, and click on the bell if you're watching this on YouTube to see more of my videos.